Thank you, Sarah.
Very few artists keep filling stadiums over decades. What drives you to keep doing these big concerts?
The audience, really. It's great having a good band all rehearsed up and enjoying playing, but the final ingredient is definitely the audience, and they're so good these days. I mean, they always were, except in the very early days of the Beatles when they were terrible, and the very early days of Wings when they were also terrible. But nowadays, these days, they're really good, and the warmth that comes off them is palpable.
I want to ask you about coming back to Australia. I think it's your 5th time here. Why are you coming back again?
I like Australia. I like Aussies. And even though they think I'm a whinging pom, I don't care. I like them.
Your first tour here was in 1964, peak Beatlemania. They say the Australians made more noise than anybody else in the world. Do you still remember that young man from 1964?
Yeah, this is him still here. Well, he's just not so young anymore. But yeah, I do pinch myself. It's funny, isn't it? I don't think we think that often. This is that same guy. He just grew a bit. So yeah, I recognise him and have great memories, especially when you see the films of the reaction the Aussies gave us the first time round. It was exceptional, and you'd have to be half dead to not love it. So yeah, I have great memories of them and that young man they were shouting at.
You did the headline act at Glastonbury last year. There was an incredible moment when you sang with John Lennon. The vocals had been isolated from Peter Jackson's film, The Making of Get Back. What was it like singing with John Lennon again?
It's magic. Peter texted me and he said, we could isolate John's voice out and you could play live, and that would mean you would be singing with John again. And I say the first time I ever did it, it was very emotional, and it keeps being emotional because, I'm singing with my old buddy again.
For the audience, it really is like being transported.
Well, that was the thing about Peter Jackson and doing the Get Back film, that he had to use a lot of new technology. So he texted me once, and I'd said to him, I'm not so sure I'm going to like this film, because the first time around was all associated with the Beatles breaking up, and I thought it just might be a bit too sad for me to actually enjoy it. But he started to send me stuff, and it was like, oh, that's good. Oh, it's me and John having a laugh.
So it must have been good revisiting that story that was, according to the narrative of the time, so bitter.
It was really good for me because since that time, I'd kind of worried that in the studio with the Beatles, I might have been too bossy. Because, sometimes I'd say, no, we got to do it like this. No. So I kind of ended up buying into this idea that, poor old other three, and I'm just bossing them around. But when I saw the film, I'm thinking, no, I'm not. It's okay. It's just us in the studio, and I'm not bossing them. Everyone's kind of happy to work like that. So it was a big relief for me. Actually, it made me feel really good about that whole period. And also, seeing people who are no longer with us, like John and George and Linda, and Mal, our roadie, and Neil, seeing the whole crowd brought to life so beautifully, so expertly by Peter was amazing. It was a joy.
In those scenes in the film, you've got John Lennon with you as you're creating those songs. How long did it take you to figure out how to write songs without his great mind and great skill sitting alongside you.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, I think it was the same for both of us. You know, I talked to him later and we missed each other's input. Yeah, so for me, yeah, John's input was very important and, as you say, very skillful. So that these days, even when I'm writing a song, I will kind of check with him just mentally, you know, does this suck like I think it does? Right, let's get rid of it. Start again. Yeah, so I really missed that. And I know he missed the contact with me too. Because you think about it, it really made the whole process kind of easy. You know, we'd go in a room, two guitars, sitting opposite each other, and we'd start with some sort of idea. Maybe one of us would have brought in an idea. And then we just work on it and throw ideas back and forth. And it was fun and it was quick. And, you know, like I say, you know, the only example I can think of was when we were first writing together. I had the song which became I Saw Her Standing There. So I started, my original first verse was, she was just 17, she'd never been a beauty queen. I kind of looked at him and said, I'm not sure about that line. And he said, no, it's horrible, it's got to go. So we just thought a little bit extra, and it was like, she was just 17, you know what I mean. We were, yeah, that'll do. Stuck that down. So yeah, to be able to solve problems that quickly with someone you could totally trust was a great boon for both of us.
There's a fascinating moment when you spoke about your early understanding of how chord changes work in your music. I think the song you spoke about was Here, There and Everywhere. I want to ask you a really simple musical question. Why is it that those chord changes move us so much?
Well, because it's magic. That's why. It's just magic. And when you think about it, we try and analyze it. It's frequencies. You know, it's just a bunch of frequencies. So even when they're organized into a musical composition, there's no reason really why they should affect us, but they do. And you can hear sometimes a piece of classical music that hasn't got any lyrics, so there's no reason for it to touch your heartstrings, but it does. It's just like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. How? I don't know. It's magical, and I think it's great because it seems to be unique to the human race. You know, we've become this sort of superior being, and unfortunately we don't always behave like we are, but we've got these amazing skills, and music is one of them. And so I don't know how it works. Sometimes when you've got lyrics, you can touch a nerve with people with words. But it's more than that. It's more than that. It somehow touches our soul. And it's magic.
Paul McCartney, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.